What's up? I'm Ayla.
I'm Beth Ann.
And this is Let's Talk BL, a Boys Love podcast.
Welcome back to the podcast. I'm really excited to talk about this topic today.
I know. This is a widely requested. Once we mentioned that we might do this, we got a lot of like, please, 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 yes, do it. We were like, hey, we're thinking about doing this. And we got so many people being like, please, 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 please do it.
Because I feel like book fans are so passionate, which I get. Like, I have read some books and I'm like, this is the best book I've ever read. I want to read it over and over again. Nobody could ever turn it into a show or a movie properly. Like, you become impassioned about this thing that you really love. And so, yeah, I can understand.
I mean, it's interesting because I've talked before on the podcast about how like my first fandom was actually like I was a book nerd.
Yeah.
I read books. I was like big into. I was like, yeah, like the book girl. I read all the books and I like had all the opinions and like I suffered through all of the terrible adaptations and I had a lot of fun with all the good adaptations.
Yeah.
So this was a really interesting experience for me having that background of like I was like a book nerd. Like my books were like my world because for me, I've talked about this before on the podcast. Like I've always been interested in like traveling and exploring the world and like and so for me I realized at kind of a young age, like when I say young age, I mean I don't know, I was probably like I found my love of reading very young. So I remember I was in first grade and I read Little Women and everyone was very impressed and I remember being confused as to why people would be like impressed by that, but like as a Virgo, anybody who understands astrology will understand that. I was like, okay, bet. Like, let's keep up with this. And because of that, I just started reading more and more and like found this love for it. And I realized that I was like exploring the world and new worlds and other worlds in a way that like I didn't grow up with a lot of money. So like in a way that I didn't think I ever would. Not necessarily that I wouldn't be able to, but that just like
it didn't
in a way that I couldn't as like a 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old, right?
Right.
And so this experience was really interesting for me because as I became an adult and I went to college and I actually went to college for publishing and I ended up in magazines, but I wanted to be in books. Like I have a master's in publishing.
Nice.
And so like I love books.
Did you ever watch the TV show Younger?
Yes.
Oh.
Okay. Yes, because everybody was like, watch it. Like, that's one of the annoying things about, like, when you're in a profession that, like, yeah, everybody's like, oh, did you watch it? Oh, is this part real? Oh, this, that, like, all this stuff.
True. Oh, that's so good. Yeah, I definitely have a more casual relationship with books, especially as it relates to TV shows and movies. I think growing up, like, I did read occasionally. Like, I have some, like, solid... like the BFG is one of my favorites. That was like my go-to rewatch. And like one of my favorite books that I remember having such a big impact on me the first time I read it, and I don't remember if I read it in high school or college, was The Awakening by Kate Chopin. I was like, my world was changed. And I don't know if they have made it into a movie or a show, but that's one of those that like I don't think like I want the book to just kind of stand by itself. So I typically will read a book either because I want to just read the book because I like an author, or I'll read it as a compliment to a show, which is kind of what I did for our first BL novel. I read it as like a compliment to the show because I loved the characters and I really wanted to know more about them and their story. And so, yeah, I probably have more of like a casual, loose relationship with reading. I like pick it up and put it down occasionally. But I don't have any strong feelings or attachments.
See, and I went the other way with it. So part of the like, and I've mentioned this before on the podcast too. So if you're a loyal listener, sorry if you're having to hear this for like the 85th time. Yeah. Part of the like reading experience for me is getting to like experience the world creating itself as I'm reading it, right? And so to like not go into it knowing what it's supposed to look like or feel like or what like the building's supposed to be like or like knowing what someone else's interpretation of it is, like part of the experience for me is like experiencing the creation of that world as I read, right? And so like I will very rarely, like if I find out that a movie is coming out that sounds interesting to me, or a show that's coming out that sounds interesting to me is based on a book, I'll go read the book real quick before I watch the show or the movie, because a lot of times it has to do with like, I find out about the show or the movie because I really like the actor. And so I'm like, well, I'm going to watch this because I like this actor.
Yeah.
Because I absolutely cannot stand reading a book after I have watched the movie or the series, because it doesn't feel like the real reading experience, just for me personally. Like that's just one of the things I love the most about reading.
Right.
So I never do that. And so I went the opposite way. I chose a novel for a couple of reasons. So first of all, we chose different novels so that we could talk about different experiences.
Hold on, one question. Did you finish like a series of novels before you watched any movie? Like, were you done with Harry Potter when the movies came out? Or like were you done with Hunger Games when the movies came out?
So Harry Potter was an interesting one because the movies started coming out before the series was done.
Right.
But like, yes, I had read the book. Like I read all of the Harry Potters that were like current before the first one ever even came out, because it was a deer book. Like I could earn those books with my deer points. And so for anyone listening that didn't go to school, like elementary school, public elementary school in the United States, there used to be this program called DEAR, where like, I forget what it stood for. It's like something about reading, and you earned points based on like the amount that you read. And then you could use those points to like buy things in school. And so you could use them to like, I don't know, like buy extra recess, or like buy, like you could pick your lunch period, like, right? Like, or at my elementary school, you could buy books. And so I was like earning enough deer points to buy myself the Harry Potter books as they were coming out. Yes, I had read all of Harry Potter. Hunger Games was an experience for me because I had read all the Hunger Games books before the movie was even announced. And then the movie was announced, and Josh Hutcherson is my favorite actor and has been my favorite actor since I was like 14.
Right.
And so when that happened, it was like mind-blowing for me. So yes, typically I have already like read the series or the book, but like it's for Harry Potter, right, that's a hard one because like the books were still coming out while the movies were being made.
So do the characters that they then introduced to you in a movie, did that kind of take over your mind when you were reading the subsequent books after you had seen the movies?
No, because I already knew what like Harry looked like in my mind, or like Hermione looked like in my mind, because like I'm someone with like the same hair texture as Hermione is supposed to have in the book. And so like for me, that was a character that really resonated with me. And so like I already had sort of like made up my mind about what she looked like. And I think I've told you this before, they actually cut my favorite scene out of Chamber of Secrets. So my favorite scene in the book is not in the movies, it's Valentine's Day. So in Chamber of Secrets is the only book where they show Valentine's Day happening at Hogwarts, because you know Hogwarts, they like all the holidays are like so a million times, whatever, right?
It's amazing.
And so they like in the book, Valentine's Day is a part of the book, and it wasn't in the and I remember sitting in that movie and I walked out and I was like in tears. I was so upset that I didn't get to see like someone else's take on it on screen. So like I do think they're complementary. It's not that I hate, or you know, that like I think they're like at odds.
The closest I can think of, so as a North Carolinian, I was really into the Nicholas Sparks books because he's from North Carolina. And, you know, those were like super popular in the early 2000s. And I read all of his books. And his books, when they get made into movies, are kind of a range. So A Walk to Remember was set in the book in like the 50s maybe. But the movie was set modern times, right? The Shane West, Mandy Moore movie. And A Walk to Remember beats The Notebook for me. Whereas The Notebook, that movie was set according to the timeline in the book. So I think the same, like 40s, 50s.
Yeah.
And so it was easier for me to
disassociate.
To watch the movie in modern times with these characters than to read a book set in the 40s. I couldn't quite wrap my head around that. Whereas with The Notebook, I had seen the movie I don't remember if I'd seen the movie and then read the book or what it was, but like the pictures made more sense to me. Potentially, I watched the movie and then read the book.
Yeah.
And so in that world, it was the same way where kind of those time periods that I didn't live, it was harder to picture and imagine.
Yeah, that makes sense. I've never read any of those books. I've watched Walk to Remember. I never watched The Notebook. I've never seen The Notebook still to this day. I know that like that genre is just a little too like saccharine sweet for me. I'm a YA girl. Like, I'm a heart like YA dystopian. Like that's my jam. Like that is what I like.
I feel like you like The Notebook because it's definitely more rough around the edges than like your typical romance.
I mean, listen, if there wasn't some sort of like cataclysmic world event that like forced people into different like that, honestly, like that's what I like. Or I like the very like the fantasy stuff that's like YA fantasy.
I see.
Is another that I would say is kind of like my second tier of what I like. It's not my favorite, but I do really like that YA. But my preferred YA is YA dystopian.
Yeah, I'm a big chick lit.
Yeah, it's a little too like saccharine sweet for me, but yeah, I mean, I do remember. So I again started reading at such a young age, and I remember suffering through my first really bad adaptation, and it was like painful to me because there's a book called Ella Enchanted.
Oh yeah.
And this book, when I tell you, is like one of the most magical, wonderful books I have ever read. It like as someone who like I always wanted to go to like private boarding school and things like that, and I was always like in like I liked that sort of story. Like the way that this book is so incredible, and the movie, I'm sorry, is garbage. It's like a loosely based on idea, and
it's
so
really
because
cheesy. It's a cheesy movie.
But because I loved that book so much, when I saw that movie, I was like offended. I was like, how dare they associate these two things with each other? And I've seen BL readers do this, and so like it's really interesting to me kind of the conversation that happens around BL novels, because I was expecting, so we chose two very different novels. I chose a novel kind of like I've done in the past for like other stuff that I like, where it's like, okay, if I had heard, so like The Kids Are All Right, there's a book. It's not a YA dystopian thing, but Josh Hutcherson was in that movie, as was Mark Ruffalo, who's one of my other favorite actors. Before it came out, I made sure I read the book. Gotcha. And so I had the same like approach, and it was the same thing with Divergent for me, right? Like, so there, Ansel Elgort is in that, and I really liked him. And so I read the books before the movies came out so that I could like, right? And so I really love both Boat and Nut. And so I chose also, here's the other thing, as English speakers, my list was limited. Yeah. Because if I actually could have picked, I would have picked Never Let Me Go. I would have picked a show I watched.
No, you're nice guy.
I would have picked Never Let Me Go. I wanted more from those characters. Like, You're My Sky, I have such a different relationship with. I think that if I were to read the novel, it might... that's a situation where it's like I need that show to live by itself for me, right? Like it means so much. It's kind of like Ella Enchanted. It's like it means so much to me the way that it was portrayed by Worldwide, by Sia, by Chris, by Portia, by Jump, by Boom, right? By all of the people that were in it. Yeah. And so I need that one to be on its own. No, I would have chosen Never Let Me Go, but it's not available in English. So that's the other thing. As English speakers, we're very limited. And
we're limited by good translations. Like,
well, I was willing to read a bad translation. Okay, I was like, because I felt like that would be an experience too. But it's true. I found a list. Some very helpful soul had made a list on Twitter, and I was going through all the available in English novels, and I saw this title, and I was like, well. I love Boat. I love Nut. We have interviewed both of them. So I have met both of them in person. Both of them, the characters that they played in the shows that I had seen them in, I loved. So like, I like their acting. I like them as people. I'm gonna watch this show no matter what. I should read the novel. And I made my decision. And I just flat out, I made my decision. I went on Amazon. I bought the Kindle book. You can buy it on Amazon. So I read... Of course, if it isn't obvious to you now, I did the thing, you guys, and I read Hot Bamee and Yummy Gyogung. It is available. Alone. I know.
I wonder if that's a direct translation.
Oh, it is.
Okay.
Because after having read the book, it's like a thing in the book. Like one of them, Bamee means ramen and Gyogung means like shrimp wonton. So they go together. Yeah. And so you can buy it on paperback, actually, which is interesting. You can have like a physical copy of this if you're using Amazon in America. It's $21.99 if you buy it paperback on Amazon. Mm-hmm. If you buy it on Kindle, if you have the Kindle Unlimited, it is free with your like Kindle Unlimited subscription, or $9.99 if you don't have that. So I paid $9.99 because I don't have that subscription. And I literally clicked the like buy now, one click. Read nothing, thought nothing,
and it's like by Jamie.
It's by Jamie.
She has a lot of English translated stuff.
So I got really lucky because the English is great.
Nice.
Yeah, I think so. I was lucky in the sense that I happened to pick a novel by an author that has great translations for her work.
I think no, she doesn't translate her own because she speaks really good English.
Yeah, and so I like the actors. I had heard that she had a reputation for having good translations, and so I just clicked buy now, click here. Now, if you are a loyal Let's Talk
This is where listener, it takes a turn. I can't wait.
You know, I'm a clutch your pearls kind of girl.
Uh-huh.
I was just talking literally today to our friend Robbie, shout out at Hey It's Robbie, about one time we were all hanging out together and one of our friends just like out of nowhere like told me I was beautiful. and it was somebody that was like a new friend to us. And we like knew each other, but not like we had like hung out, right? And like he didn't really mean anything by it. It was just like a comment. But even in my real life, I like turned bright red and like really couldn't handle it, and like really really could not handle it. And it's the same way if you happen to watch like we did a TikTok of like you making me watch Big Dragon Uncut.
Yes.
I just am very like I go shy.
Yeah.
Like I get very like like you know, and so particularly when it comes to like spicy stuff.
At what page, like from the first sentence, you were like, oh no?
Literally the first page, dick in face. Literally page 1.
And Ayla has told me this, and I'm like, I need to read this immediately.
I mean, listen, I bought the book. You can read it. Like we live in the same house. It'd be so easy.
I can't wait.
But yes, and I was like, you know what? I am having a metamorphosis. I am embracing the spice.
I can't wait for Bo and Nut to bring this. I
was like, I am gonna persevere. I thought about switching books for like a hot second. I was like, ooh, now's my chance. And then I was like, you know what? No, this is part of the experience.
If we interview them one day, you should tell them you read the novel.
I think I will.
Because I wonder if they've read the novel. Because I've heard a handful of BL actors. Like I think all the Lita boys.
Also, the casting is perfect. Like after having read the novel, I was like, oh my God, this casting is amazing. So yes, page 1, there is full crotch shot, like crotch and face, and it literally says something like, and I reread it right before we recorded this episode to make sure I was getting it right.
Yeah.
Something along the lines of like, there it was, the bulge in my face. If it had been even a like slightly closer, it would have poked my soft cheek. And it was just like
amazing.
A lot. And so like foolishly, I realized had I read any review, so it has really good reviews,
because she also wrote My Secret Love,
yes,
which was not spicy,
and she has
the series wasn't spicy, maybe the novel was.
So this novel has really good reviews, it's really high, but like
amazing.
The very first review, if you like a lot of spicy scenes, this book is for you. The third review, it's amazingly fun, and the amount of steam is amazing. Many hot scenes. And then this is my favorite one. Subject line. Shout out Chelsea, who wrote this review on Amazon, because this is a gem of a review.
Oh my God, I can't wait.
Subject line of this review: it's a feast of sex. I heard this was being turned into a live action. It's sex upon sex upon sex, so be suitably warned. Great translation. That should be like printed on the back cover of this book because it is like the perfect review.
Sex upon sex upon sex.
I did this to myself, and you know what? I did it. I persevered, and I read it, and it was an experience.
Love that for you.
Yeah, thank you.
The irony is, so after we did the Bed Friends series Sunday, Amber, shout out Amber, gifted us the novel for Bed Friends because I was so in love with these characters that I was like, I need to know more. I need to know more about how they met in college. I need to know more about their backstory. I just want to spend more time with King and Ea. And I was so excited. And it's interesting because the novel and the series are pretty one-to-one. Like, it was pretty incredible how well they matched the novel. Even they have 5 special chapters, and those 5 special chapters are incorporated into the series, kind of sprinkled throughout, because they're kind of situations. They're not really like part of the story. And so the spice in the series was it. Like, I will say the wording and the things that they like, they would refer to his penis as a middle muscle. So like those kinds of things are like interesting translations. Like I'd be curious. Word choice. Yeah. The translation was pretty great. I didn't have any trouble. I didn't think it was like too off-putting to read the translation. But otherwise, I didn't feel like it was like super spicy. I would say the series gives you more foreplay, whereas the book actually like takes you through the actual act. Right. And so I adored these characters. In fact, because we had already seen the show, when I was reading the novel, at some point, because I remembered liking certain scenes in the show, after I would read the book version, I would then go watch that episode.
Oh, interesting.
And so it was just like more time spent because, man, Nett and James did a spectacular job with these characters. Like I wouldn't want to make up another person for these characters other than Nett James. I thought they did a fantastic job with bringing these characters to life because as they talk about, I want to say somebody talked about this in maybe Nett talked about this in an interview, but I remember them talking about how it could be a really annoying character because he's like pretty cold and standoffish and he walks a line. If you don't know his trauma and his past, you're like, what is wrong with you? Why are you so closed off? Like what in the world? Because King is teasing him, but he's like generally nice to him and he has like lots of sweet friends. So you're like, what is your problem? But I thought that the way that this character was written, you understand really quickly because most of the novel is from Ea's point of view. Occasionally it'll switch to King's point of view and it'll say King's point of view and it'll be like maybe a couple of like it'll maybe be a chapter or even like a few paragraphs in a chapter, which I thought was cool. I kind of liked that back and forth of like occasionally when the scene warranted it or when the situation needed it. Like I'm trying to remember exactly what scene it was. Like I think it was like a conflict scene, right? Where in the series I had gone to the boss's office when King was like, don't go to the boss's office.
Spoilers. We're trying to limit the spoilers, FYI, if you're listening to this, but like it's bound to happen.
I mean, I feel like I'll leave it general. So they have conflict about him going to the boss's office. And so it's nice to then switch to King's point of view because he sees that whole situation differently.
Right.
Then, obviously. And so, like, oh my gosh, I just thought this novel, they did such a great job with this novel. It like really made me want to read more novels because I was like, these characters. But again, like we've talked about, it's hard because like there's not a ton of English translation. I kind of want to read Love in the Air. They just translated the first couple of chapters of Love Storm, but also seeing that like Tarn Type did not have good translations. Like the translations were awful. I don't know if Don't Say No has translations.
I'm not sure. Yeah. For me, more what I took away from it, I really did love this novel because there was, even though it was really spicy, I feel like if this was my lot in life, right? That like I just like randomly had picked really this.
Funny. I chose a friends with benefits.
Well, and it wasn't random.
Like,
it was that like
super hot.
Like I had a reason behind it, but it wasn't like I didn't fully conceptualize like what I was getting myself into, right? But like it was kind of like the perfect one for me because the other parts of the story are really, really sweet, and it's exactly like the style of flirting that I like. So I tease people. Like I'm a teaser. Yeah. Like I like to tease people. Like if I tease you, I'm like flirting with you, or I'm like, it's like because I love you, you're my friend, whatever. Yeah. Like if I'm like kind of giving you a hard time, like teasing you, it's like a sign of affection. And that's how I like to like flirt with people, and that's how like people flirt with me teasing. I'm like that, like that's because I can go like tete-a-tete. Like I like playing like the game of flirting kind of. And so like that's what a lot of this story is sort of like a game of flirting back and forth. Yeah. And they use a lot of like innuendo and like a lot of like wordplay.
Oh, cute.
Which is really fun.
That is fun.
And it's just, like it's really it's such an interesting contrast because they're like the spicy scenes are spicy and there is no shortage of them, but the rest of the story is really like sweet and it's like fun and it's like it's probably was the perfect novel that I could read if this was gonna happen to me, right? And so I did really like it. It was a genre shift for me. So more than anything, I think this made me realize that like I probably will not continue to read BL novels, most likely, because the genre is just so drastically different than like what I like to read. Like my preferred genre is dystopian YA, where there's like a lot of like world buildup. Not like there's a lot of like buildup about like the world and the surroundings and like contributing factors and you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of like that kind of stuff. And that's what because I value that type of experience in reading, I love a good book that can like build a world for me versus like, at least if this novel is any indication, like we're just going straight for it. Like we just like.
So you're not into fantasy such as Omegaverse.
No. When I say fantasy, I'm talking like Sarah J. Maas, dystopian. Like those books. Yeah. Well, so Sarah J. Maas isn't like, it's not dystopian books. It's more, it's like fantasy, like, I don't want to say medieval because that's not the right word.
Like
but
fairies?
Yeah, like that
like
kind of
mystical.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know about you.
Like princes and princesses, but like in like a magical
like Lord
world.
of the Rings,
like a sort of. Okay. Yeah. But like if Lord of the Rings was actually like Lord of the Rings isn't YA, so like if Lord of the Rings was YA, kind of.
Yeah.
Anyways, it's just not my preferred genre, so I probably won't read more BL novels only because that's like I love a good like world build.
Yeah.
And this genre very clearly is not this now. I read a lot of fan fiction as a teenager.
I was gonna ask
I wrote fan fiction as a teenager.
About what?
Not One Direction. I read a lot of One Direction fanfic. I read One Direction fanfic. No, I wrote one fanfic. And it was about a boy band called Dream Street.
Amazing.
That Jesse McCartney was in.
I love it.
Jesse McCartney was not even my favorite member of that boy band. My favorite was Frankie.
Amazing.
Yes. Yes. But this struck me a lot like fanfic. Okay. And no tea, no shade. Honestly, like I read a lot of fanfic. There's a lot of One Direction fanfic that I like loved and genuinely think should be like their own books.
Right.
And so like if you're a fanfic reader, if you enjoy fanfic, like this is your jam. And I would even say, okay, so the green novels, if you like those, you'll probably like a BL novel, which I did read those novels because, again, I really liked Ansel Elgort. I wanted to be able to watch that movie. So when that came out. I read that book. Also, I had read Looking for Alaska because it had like so much hype when I was in high school. It was like really, really hyped. I never loved Looking for Alaska, which I know we're probably going to get people in the comments like that because that's a book that people are like impassioned about.
Okay.
I really loved Paper Towns though, which also got made into a film.
Yeah.
And so after I have read multiple Green books.
I saw those movies and I had zero interest in those books or those characters. I was like, oh, no.
Paper Towns is so much better if you read it. It really, truly is. But I like, yeah, I think if you like the Green novels, you'd probably like BL. I would say like give it a whack. Give it a go.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but I feel like my thought about, or the understanding that I had about BL novels going into it, that they were all spicy. Like that's what I feel like. Maybe because certain fans will only translate the spicy scenes,
yeah,
which is very funny. Because I guess people are interested in seeing that brought to life. But yeah, I think that was my idea, that like all BL is super spicy. But yeah, I feel like Bed Friends was not as spicy as I thought it would be. Yeah. It was, I mean, because it's very story heavy, because AI goes through a lot and King helps him through those things. And so, I mean, really just AI goes through a lot. But so yeah, I feel like this was moderate spice. I was so curious. And so I did start reading Big Dragon. Because like there's that, but
I didn't realize that was in English.
Yes, I don't remember. It might be a Wattpad situation.
Oh, I see.
But that was like, I was like, oh, never mind. I don't.
Yeah, because Big Dragon. So the Discord channel that we are members of, which if you go to our link tree, and I'll also link in the description of this episode, you can go join. Allie reads all the novels.
Yes.
And I go to Allie when I'm like, when there's a show coming out, and I will go into that channel. I will read all of Allie's like reviews about like, well, in the novel, no. And like, so they'll spoiler it, right?
Yeah.
So like you don't have to see it if you don't want to.
Right.
And so like I knew going into Big Dragon like
how crazy it was
the novel. Well, I knew what the novel was.
Right.
And so I knew what the fans wanted to see different from the novel. Right. And I knew what everyone was hoping would not make it from the novel to screen. And it sounds like overall they did a good job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't continue. But yeah, after this experience, I would say I would read another novel. I am curious now to read the one you read, because it sounds
honestly, I really did like it. So it's an office setting, but a little bit. That was another interesting thing. We both ended up with office romances. Mine is a intern boss. Or like not intern boss, intern and like trainer. So like he's not his actual boss, which like I have a whole thing with power dynamics, and like the issue that I have had like recently, just a hard time like personally, like when I'm trying to watch a show or think through something, is like the CEO and the intern getting together is like, I'm like, that's a power dynamic that I need to figure out how I feel about it first, right? But like this is like a like a lower level trainer, kind of like I would imagine Middleman's Love is going to be.
Yeah. It's Middleman's Love is just an employee and a college intern.
Yeah, so this one is an intern. They call him a trainee.
Okay.
And like one of the trainers on his team.
It was interesting because I then was like, oh, I kind of want to read Middleman's Love because I love Tudor Yim and I'm curious about those characters. And Mai plays a bigger role in Bed Friends than I realized. And so, because we didn't get him at all in the show.
Right.
And so, but I was reading the reviews and people were like, Middleman's Love wasn't that great.
Yeah. I mean, I think honestly, if Never Let Me Go ever got translated, I would read it. But that's probably like the only one that I think I would read.
Yeah, I do want to read Love in the Air. I'm very curious about that. But yeah, this is a fun experience.
It was a really interesting experience, I will say.
So if you are an avid reader, tell us what BLs you have read and tell us what you think we should read next? What would be interested?
Yeah.
I do wonder if there are any dystopian BL novels.
I know. I mean, you would think like there's like a million worlds. That's a nice thing about like reading and writing and like why I have a master's in publishing and I love books and reading so much is like there's a million worlds that can be created. You start with like I've like kind of said before my favorite thing like as a writer. So before I like went super corporate and you know went big boss, I like was a writer. Like that's how you get your start is you like I was a copywriter and then I was an article writer and then I was like I wrote my way through things is like for me there's nothing more satisfying than you start with a blank Word doc. It's a white screen and you create something out of nothing. It's just out of your brain. Like I just think that is so cool. Like that's such a cool like you don't need tools. You don't need like pieces of wood and nails and like you're creating a world with literally just things that are coming out of your brain. Like I don't know. I love it so much.
Was The Untamed a novel?
I don't know.
Because I bet you'd be super into that situation based on the hot minute that I got through that show.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know.
Because I wonder if there's certain countries that have more translations of things.
Yeah.
Like
I literally, honestly, when I was picking my book, I found a list someone had put together on Twitter that probably wasn't complete, but shout out to that person for doing it.
I'd be curious to know what that list is.
And I just like I was reading through the titles and I was like, Nut and Boat. I love them. Like
I did try to read Heartstopper, but it's a cartoon.
That's a graphic novel, so it's different.
It was a little hard for me to
I almost bought Heartstopper. I was at a festival of books and one of the
the nerdiest thing I've ever heard.
How rude.
Festival of books.
I was at a festival of books. I was at the Tucson Festival of Books. Thank you very much.
I love
it. Recently, and the publisher for that like has Heartstopper, I guess for the States, had a booth there, and I was just like walking through their booth and I saw it and I almost bought it. I was like so close. I was like, I should buy this just to like buy it. But I've tried to read graphic novels before because like my little brother read graphic novels and so like they've been in the same household as me before, and graphic novels just aren't my thing.
I bet that would be easier to read than a digital version because I did try to read the digital version and I bet it would be
like holding the book. I mean, I personally have deep beliefs and like very strong opinions about like physical books, but we don't need to get into
I do love the library, so
a physical book. Listen, I literally did my like dissertation, my final project in grad school was about why the physical book will never die.
I love it.
Like hard print will never die. Like tech can never kill it. And I literally did a dissertation I could like prove it with data. Like I collected data, like I could prove it to you.
I love it.
Yeah,
that makes sense. Well, hopefully there will be, now that BL is becoming more and more international, hopefully there will be more of a push because I feel like there's been more of a conversation about people wanting translations of BL novels.
Well, and I've noticed Thailand has had a lot of like book fairs recently, and oh my god, I loved a book fair in elementary school. So again, if you didn't grow up in the States, we had these things called the Scholastic Book Fair, and it was a day where Scholastic, which is a book publisher, would come into your school and they would like set up a utopia of books.
They still have them,
and you got to go. And
you got like a magazine beforehand.
Yes,
like
and you could like pick out what you wanted and like circle it in there. And then you got to go and you got to look at all of them and like touch all of them. And then like your parents would give you the amount, like your specific amount of money that you could spend. And they also had things like erasers and pens and stuff like that. And it was amazing.
It was like a portable Barnes and Noble.
It was so much fun. And so there have been a lot of like book fairs I've noticed like in Thailand recently, just because actors have been making appearances.
They're doing another round right now.
Yeah. And I noticed that like a lot of international fans are going like for the fan experience of it. And I wonder if that will prompt more publishers to have international copies of things available. I hope if I ever get to Thailand again, next time I get to Thailand, there's one going on because I'd be fascinated to go to one, even if there's like nothing I can buy or have.
Is Love Mechanics translated?
I not that I could find where I could like buy it. I also wanted to do something like I wanted to pick a book that I could like buy, that I could like, because that felt right.
Because that world is fascinating to me, because there's so much to it. Or maybe Rookie Thailand just like took that one source material and ran with every story possible.
I don't know.
This has been so fun. I was so excited to talk about a book, a new experience for us. We're always open to new ideas and experiences that people want to listen to us talk about.
Stay tuned for a whole new experience this Sunday. It is a Sunday at Let's Talk BL like you have never experienced before. It is not business as usual on Sunday. This Sunday,
it's sweet.
You could say that. So stay tuned. This Sunday will be our final Sunday episode. And following that, this coming Wednesday is the final episode of season 3.
We're taking a break.
And then we will be back in July.
Oh my gosh. This has been Let's Talk BL. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow all things Let's Talk BL at Let's Talk BL.